You're now listening to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. Straightforward, no nonsense business advice. Completely unfiltered. Grow your business. Grow your life. Now, here's your host, Brian Fullerton.
Hey, what's up, guys? All right, welcome to another episode of the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. I'm really excited about this episode because we have another podcast guy. We have another green industry guy on the phone. We got none other than the man, Paul Jamison. What's going on, Paul? How you doing?
What's up, Brian? Thanks for having me on your show, man.
Well, dude, for sure. Thanks for being on the show. I know before we hit the record button, you and I were talking for a half hour beforehand, and dude, you're just jacked up. You're always jacked up and excited. I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to be on the show, and it's fun too having another podcast guy on the show. We're gonna really break some things down here. We're gonna talk about your actual traditional business, which is really cool, and then we want to talk about some stuff about social media and the green industry podcast, which is just absolutely blowing up and just been a staple resource to the lawn care community. So before we jump into it and we go down the rabbit hole, why don't you give everybody your stats? Like give everybody maybe a snapshot of where you're at right now in business, how long you've been in business, and maybe where you live and all that fun stuff.
Absolutely. I live down here in Atlanta, Georgia. And by the way, I have on my calendar November 7th, 2020, baby, the Entrepreneur Academy Live in Novi, Michigan, right? I got my dates right?
Yes, sir.
So now the goal, Brian, is that, and who knows, because we're recording this and then you're going to upload it, maybe a few weeks after our conversation because you are a content king. But I'm gonna hopefully have a girlfriend by then.
Okay.
So hopefully maybe even a fiance. We'll see, man. I got to meet her first, and the goal is to get married. But hopefully, I'm not on that trip alone. You ever visualize something?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, that'd be cool if I'm flying up there with my future wifey.
Yeah.
And, can introduce her to you and Liz and all the cool people that will be at your conference. But back to the snapshot. I'm a podcaster too. This is weird. You asking me the questions because I'm used to talking my ear off. And my producer Marty
Amen.
says, "Come on, Paul, shut up, reel it in here." But we're down here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I've been in business for 10 years at the Jamison Management Group. The first few years, I did a few things right, but most things wrong, and got off to a rough start, and it was a disaster. And a couple awesome mentors came alongside me and showed me the ropes, and we got things fixed, and then really had some incredible breakthroughs, gotten some really exclusive Atlanta neighborhoods, and now my customers, a lot of them play or coach in the National Football League, some really good players, like, guys that are making $20 million over a few years, but big contracts, big name NFL stars, and some of the defensive coordinators and coaches, and some business executives, and it's just been it's been absolutely wild ride at the Jamison Management Group. And we launched the podcast as well a couple of years ago, and that's been a super fun journey as well.
Well, dude, there's so much stuff to unpackage. I really am excited about having you on the show. And by the way, side note, it was funny because I had Julio on the podcast with Lawn Care Business Success, right? And he goes, it's way different being on the other end of the mic, and being on the firing line, answering all the questions, because usually he's interviewing. And so I said, I'm like, take it. Now you know how we all feel, So we were just having fun. But let's do this. Before we jump into it, let's hear from the announcements, and then we'll start unpackaging a bunch of stuff that you were just alluding to.
Have you ever thought about starting your own lawn and landscaping business, but not sure where to start? Look no further than LawnTrepreneurAcademy.com, an e-training website dedicated to helping you start and grow a successful lawn care business. Save more time and make way more money by learning exactly what it takes to grow your business to the next level. Invest in your future by first investing in yourself. Use promo code PODCAST to save 10% on all training programs today at LawnTrepreneurAcademy.com. Now, back to the show.
All right, cool. So let's slow down before we speed up because there's so many things to unpackage here, and I know both of us are a ball of energy, especially when we get on the microphone, right? So let's do this. So let's talk about Jamison Management Group, because a lot of folks know you from the Green Industry podcast, and some do, but not everybody does know that you actually run a green industry business. You have your own lawn and landscape company. A lot of uniqueness to your business, because I'd say you're a little bit more boutique and you have some really high-end clients, which we can go down that rabbit hole for a few, because I think it's really cool. But let's talk about the evolution. How did you get into the green industry, and when did you decide to start your business? And did you start it in Atlanta, or I know you're from Ohio too, though, right?
Yeah, I moved down from Ohio, and when I graduated college, I moved to Atlanta. And shortly after that, I'm a broke wasn't in college anymore, but just got out of college and didn't have a bunch of money or anything. And it's a really cool story. My friend, he's a really good musician and singer-musician, really, really good. And long story short, Randy Jackson, he's on the I don't watch TV, but he used to be the guy on American Idol.
Okay.
And he, you know that show?
Yeah.
Idol?
He's the black guy, right?
Randy Jackson.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, cool.
So, anyway, he's hanging out with a guy one day, and they were playing music and doing music stuff in the studio, and he heard my friend. And Randy Jackson says, "Who in the world is that?" And they said his name or whatever. He lives in Atlanta, and Randy's like, "You have his contact info?" And he's like, "Yeah." And so he called him on the spot. So he calls my friend, and my friend picks up, and he says, "Hey, this is Randy Jackson." And my friend's like, "Ha ha ha." And hung up on him. He thought it was a friend pranking him.
Oh,
he didn't know which friend, but he thought it was someone pranking him. And so anyway, he calls right back and he's like, "Hey, sorry we got disconnected. This is Randy Jackson." Then my friend was thinking, "Man, it does sound like him. Like this is a really good impersonation." So he just started going with it and talking to Randy Jackson, and it's for real. And Randy Jackson's like, "Man, you're a raw talent. Where do you live?" And he's like, "Atlanta." And he's like, "All right, well, what are you doing Friday night?" So anyway, Randy Jackson flies to Atlanta, takes him out, and my friend still thought it was a prank, Brian. So, he tells him, "Meet me at this steakhouse in Buckhead, which is a rich part of Atlanta." So, long story short, my friend drives down there like, "I think this is real, but I might be getting pranked by my friends." He goes down there, and sure enough, this black SUV pulls up. The bodyguards come out, open the door. Randy Jackson comes walking out, and my friend's like, "Holy, what in the world?" And they have steak dinner, and basically Randy's like, "Hey, dude, you are straight talent. Let's work together. Can you come out west for a year and let's put some music together and let me get your career going. You are, he doesn't say this to just anybody. He's like, "You're a gem, and let's rock and roll." So my friend calls me. This is the point to how my lawn care story started with Randy Jackson, basically. Yeah. So my friend calls me and says, "Hey, Paul." Long story short, tells me that story, and he's like, "I got to go out west for a year, but financially, my mortgage is $928 a month. There's no way we can float that while we're gone. We don't have time to put the house in the market. Like, this is a career. You just hop on the plane and go the next day when Randy Jackson says he wants to work with you, and that's your industry."
Sure,
you know what I mean?
Sure.
So he's like, "Bro, I know this is like the craziest favor to ask you, but is there any way you can live in my house for the next year and pay my mortgage, $928. Like, the house is yours, like, whatever you want to do." And I'm a businessman, even back then, I was like, "Well, what if I rent out all the rooms, and charge everyone, $350 because it's a big old house."
Sure.
In Atlanta, the market's not what it is up. You guys are living, man, and I've been to your suburb, man. That's where the rich people live up there with all them auto plants. But down here in Atlanta, you can live like a king for less. So I said, "It's a deal, dude." So I go and I move in, and I got to pay his mortgage. And I filled up the house with 4 or 5 other guys, charge them $350, and I'm turning a profit. I have free rent, and, living in the king size bed, and it worked out well. But in the evenings, I would go on prayer walks. Just walk around the neighborhood and either listen to music or talk to the Lord, and just walk around the neighborhood and prayer walk in the evenings. It's kind of what I did. So I'm on a prayer walk one day, and I'm sitting there and I'm asking God, what should I do with my wife? I mean, I'm out of college and I'm trying to figure things out. And as I'm on this prayer walk, I get to a spot, and I just stop and I'm looking at this yard that has a for sale sign in it, and the grass hadn't been cut in a month. And I'm like, this is really weird. Like, if you're going to sell your house, you're going to want it to look the best yard in the neighborhood. You're going to try to sell the house. So I said, something smells foul here. Something's not right at all, because this makes no sense unless this person is just a bad real estate agent. So I called the real estate agent and I said, hey, I noticed I'm walking through your neighborhood, and I noticed you have a yard or a house that's for sale, and the yard is dramatically overgrown. And she's like, oh my gosh, she said, we've used the same landscaper for 20 years. He went to the hospital, and he kept thinking he was going to be out in a few days, and it keeps getting worse and worse, and it just keeps going on and on and on. So we've been trying to get a replacement, and it was, during the spring rush, and every company's busy, and so she's like, we're doing everything we can to get somebody out there. Hopefully we got someone coming. She's like, are you interested in doing it? Now, Brian, I didn't have I cut my dad's grass for free as a kid, as a chore. I mean, I didn't have a choice. And
right.
Then I'd mow the neighbor's yard growing up as a kid. Frank next door would throw me $20.
Right.
And I'd push, it's a small little yard in Ohio. I'd cut his grass for $20.
Yeah.
And that's all the experience I had. I didn't have any equipment or anything. But, she said something, and I was like, yeah, I'll do it. $60. I mean, I'm a businessman. You know what I mean? That's, it's in my DNA. It's in my blood. And so she's like, deal. She's like, just here's my email address. Email me a picture when you're done, and we'll send you a check. So, bam, my first transaction. It just so happened that there was a mower in the garage where I was living that I used to cut the grass at the house I was living at. So I walked that over to the neighbor. It was his neighbors, a few houses down. So I go and try to cut the grass. Well, it wasn't. The grass was so high that mower wouldn't even cut it. So. That was the beginning of my business. I ended up paying my other friend who had a big mower to come over and cut it. And thankfully, my friend who had a lawn care company just had bought a nursery. And that nursery was the spring rush, and he hadn't gotten around to selling off all his equipment. So he's like, hey, man, he's like, until you get established, just use all my stuff. And then when you're done, I'll sell it. So I had, steel backpack blowers and weed eaters and edgers, and I was blessed. I had all his stuff to use.
Wow.
Until I eventually could save up and buy my own, and that's exactly what I did. I saved up and I bought my own weed eater, and I bought my own edger, and I bought my own blower, and then I bought my own mower, and then he eventually sold all his stuff. So I was really fortunate to have him kind of help me. But I didn't have a truck, so I had a Honda Accord, and I put the weed eater in the back seat, and then I angle it to go to the front passenger seat, and it would stick out the window a little bit, and then I'd fold the mower down and put it in the trunk. You're laughing. It wasn't funny. It was embarrassing.
That's how I got started, man. I had a Hyundai Elantra. I had a Hyundai, dude. Yeah, I did that. So that's
and I didn't even have a car. It's a car I rented, $150 a month. I was renting it from a family at church, and then when I returned it to them, she's like, it smells like gas in here. She's like, what, did you spill gas? And I was like, well, yeah, actually I did.
So, no, it was just a bad Starbucks drink. Dude,
so that's how we got started. Fast forward 10 years. Now I'm serving literally very wealthy and famous people, and the things have improved. And in that 10-year period, I've made about every mistake you could imagine. And I've learned from it. And that's part of why we started the podcast. It's like, man, I don't want, I laugh at all those stories now, but at the time I was overwhelmed, intimidated, scared, and I remember it like yesterday. And so that's part of why we do the show now, is to help guys like myself that are just getting started to do things right.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, dude, we're definitely going to be cracking that egg open on the tail end, because I really want to talk about the Green Industry Podcast, because it's just, you have so much momentum with it, so many good things going on with it. So we're definitely going to go down that rabbit hole. But I appreciate you being open about your story and your startup story, because I truthfully didn't even know that story. I didn't know if how you got started or how long you've been in business. And actually, before we hit the record button, I'm like, you have a real business, I know, but like, what's the name of it? And you're like, Jamison Management Group? I'm like, how long have you been doing this? And you're like, 10 years. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? I'm like, I had no idea that you had such a large background in doing everything that we're doing. So let me ask you this. On that timeline, that evolution, were you always mowing? Were you doing more landscaping? Like what's your guys' forte, or what's some of the things that you really enjoy doing? I know you guys do a lot of side jobs. I've seen that a lot lately on Instagram and YouTube.
Absolutely. So we started off mow, edge, blow. That's just all I knew. And then obviously when you're in that world, the customer asks, hey, can you put in our mulch? Hey, here in Georgia, we have pine straw is very popular. If you watch the Masters golf tournament, it's beautiful pine straw in the, underneath the pine trees. And so that's very popular. I know up in Michigan and Ohio, and where I was from Ohio originally, but a lot of folks up there, almost everyone up there has mulch. It's not as popular down south. I mean, there are some customers that have mulch, but by far, pine straw is more popular here. In the south, so the customers started asking me to do that, and so I learned how to throw a bale of pine straw down. Obviously, learned how to. I already knew how to mulch because my, went back to the chores as a kid. Family would order 5-6 yards of mulch every year, and I'd be blessed to get to go out there with the wheelbarrow and shovel. And I hated it back then. Because I wasn't getting paid. I didn't get paid. I had to do it, and it was like backbreaking work. So I like despised every time in the spring when, hey, the mulch truck's coming today, Paul. Get out there. And,
sure.
So I had bad memories. But then when you're getting paid doing it,
traumatized.
It's a little more fun. And then, then I got one day I was working, and the neighbor said, hey, you think you can we're looking to get some sod. Do you think you can put in sod? And me, I'm, oh, absolutely, no problem. So then I go, and the Lord provided me some really good mentors. And this was, a little bit down the road, but I had asked some guys that had businesses that I knew, hey, do you think you can help me? And the one guy, he's like, yeah, man. He because he taught a Dave Ramsey class, which really impacted my life. And I knew he owned a landscaping company, so I had already been in communication, and he had been helping me with my finances with the Dave Ramsey deal. So I was like, hey, I'm also in efforts to pay off my debt, I'm doing this lawn care thing. You think you can help me? And I asked him, and he's accomplished, successful businessman, and Brian, he said yes. And we met at Panera. He got me a cup of coffee, and we sat down for hours, and he just mapped out everything, and just in that. I know I keep teasing the podcast, but that's another reason why I started podcasts. Like, he was so further down in life than me, financially and career wise and everything. And I'm just, fresh kid out of college that thought I knew everything, but in reality knew nothing.
Right.
And he took the time. He had nothing to gain from me. I didn't pay him. I didn't have anything to offer him, but he wanted to help me, and he came alongside me, and we sat there at that Panera, and he had all his notes, and he, he's going 100 miles per hour. I probably only retained like 3% of what he told me.
Sure.
But it began that relationship, and he taught me, and he mapped everything out. And then, so, I would call him and say, hey, I got a side job. And then he'd, all right, come on over, and he'd show me how to quote it. And it was just so helpful. And then show me how to do it. And then, the first and second one wasn't that great, but we got better and better at the execution and the quality of the work. And now we're, we do perfect work, if you will. And I'm a perfectionist in my personality, so it carries over into the work. And learned my numbers, and then had another mentor come along that helped me. And so what I had learned about halfway through my business is my profit margins are substantially better in landscape installations, because if I charge a customer $400 a month, we do year-round programs here in Atlanta. So $400 a month, not 12 months, that's $4,800 a year I'm going to make off of that property. But we're coming 52 weeks a year, because in Atlanta you come every week. Different companies do it different ways, but we just say, you pay us $400 on the first of each month, and we'll come 52 weeks a year. Now in January and February, we're not doing as much work as we are during the summertime, but needless to say, that's $4,800 in revenue a year. However, I got to go 52 visits a year. Well, if I do a $4,800 landscape job at a 40% profit margin, we can bang that out, depending on how many, the material and how many guys. That's probably a 2-day job, maybe even a 1-day job, if it's, just depending. And then it's over with. Like, we don't have to come another 51 times a year.
Right.
And we just get in and we get done. And so financially, it started making sense to me, the landscape installation. The reason I still have several lawn maintenance accounts is this: I love my customers. I mean, I have one customer. I love football. He's the captain of the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, he's the captain of the Atlanta Falcons. The other customer is the defensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons. My other customer coaches for the New York Giants. My other customer coaches for the Los Angeles Chargers, and he has 2 jet skis and a boat, and they let me go to their house. And if I want to take a girl on a date, and hopefully I'll get my real girlfriend to be my wife, and I'm really on the eve of who knows by the time you publish this if everything will be public. But I got things brewing. So anyway, I got all these connections. So I do their yards weekly, more so out of it's just I love all the benefits of they treat me awesome. They take me to the games, and so you saw me out in Silicon Valley. One of my customers flew me out there because he's like, dude, I know you love. He didn't call me dude, but he's like, hey, Paul, I know you love media. He's a CFO of if I said the name of the company, you've all heard of it, but he's a big time CFO in Silicon Valley. He's so wealthy that he also has a vacation home in an exclusive neighborhood in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So anyway, he flew me out because he knows I love media, and they took me to Apple and Google and Facebook and YouTube and all those places, and toured me around. So anyway, I take care of those folks. However, my business focus is on landscape enhancements. That's where I make my more money. We got really good at doing a few different things, and we know what our profit margins are on a few different jobs, and that's what we focus on.
Yeah.
With the business.
Well, let me ask you. I really appreciate you sharing all that, because a lot of folks are always wondering like what industry part of the industry to get into and to focus on. And we've done a lot of other podcasts with folks talking about like knowing your numbers, and I always call it like staying in your lane, right? Like I'm a big mowing business. A lot of guys know that. I don't pretend.
Oh, yeah.
I don't pretend to be like a Caleb Allman doing outdoor living spaces and patios, right? Like I super admire the work, but it's just not anything that I'm going to be making a bunch of money on anytime soon, and don't want to make that investment into the equipment, right? So what if you can I press you just for asking a little bit more of the details, like you? So for example, I remember you said that you hit a turning point, like a pivot in your business where you were realizing that some of these landscape jobs were that much more money. You realized at some point some services you were offering, you weren't making a bunch of money. When did you kind of have this like know your numbers, come to Jesus moment with your business? Was there something that was like a splinter in your brain, realizing we're not making money?
I'll tell you the painful story, but I want to backtrack something I said so people don't misunderstand me.
Yeah.
The lawn care, mow, edge, and blow versus the landscape enhancements versus the Caleb Allman. I mean, Caleb Allman is in a whole nother league with the hardscaping. He's crushing it.
He's the GOAT.
That's a whole nother level. I mean, that's crazy. Like I'm talking to him last year. He's like, yeah, just put in a bid. And I was like, how much? He's like, $91,000. I said,
oh my God.
91. Your quote, like I get a $10,000 job and I'm skipping and doing backflips. Like that's a good job. You know what I mean?
I do.
91,000, Caleb. And he's like, yeah, I don't know if I did it right. And,
yeah.
Oh my God. He ended up getting it. But then it went down to 78,000 because of they cut out a part. He's like, oh, it's only 78.
Yeah. He sucked
anyway,
wind,
yeah, but it's what your business model is, what you want to do. I went up to Ring Lawn Care in Stillwater, Minnesota, and this dude he just mow, edge, and blow, and they're crushing it. He's driving me around, and he has one crew there and one crew there. He's like, yeah, we do that yard, we do that office plant, we do that commercial. I mean, he has like this route density. He just owns this little small section of Stillwater, Minnesota. And, he's publicly talked about, he did, I think 600,000 in revenue last year with his little team and just doing, cutting that grass. And so it does, one's not better than the other. It's just, you need to know why you're going, which route you're going. So don't,
right.
I don't want people saying, oh, Paul's the landscape enhancement guy. Cause no, Caleb's crushing, hardscaping, and Brian's crushing, Brian Ring, you're crushing it too, but Brian Ring's crushing high volume lawn maintenance. So they all can work. So just let me say that so you guys don't take my stuff out of context.
Yeah.
The horror story of my business is on Sunday night, because I left my radio show. I have a little bit more about me. I have a radio show in Atlanta.
Yeah. Dude, how did we skip over that? You're actually famous in Atlanta.
Well, it is funny.
Say that humbly, but you are.
Well, it's funny because this has happened a lot where I'll be in public and I'll be talking, and then someone will like tilt their head and like, "Are you Paul Jamison?" Because they just heard my voice. And it is, I mean, it's cool. It makes me feel awesome. I'm like, yeah actually Sunday, I was talking and this girl's like, she's like, "Are you Paul Jamison?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I listen to you on radio all the time." And she's like, "I thought you were fat and bald."
Oh my God. Milk it,
I
man.
said,
Milk
"No, I'm not do have a little bald spot, but I'm not fat and bald." She's like, "Because people, I'm not on video, I'm on audio. So unless they would look me up, they don't know what I look like."
Sure.
And you get a lot of weird. Maybe when you're on the radio, there's a lot of weirdos that are out there as well. So I don't always promote that I'm on social media.
Right. Right.
All right. So back to the horse story. One of these awesome mentors that was helping me. He said I was annoying him. Not annoying him, but I was always asking him, "Hey, what should I charge for this? What should I charge for this? What should I charge for this?" And he's like, "It's not good that you keep asking me all these questions. You need to really know your numbers." I know probably all your guests use those 3 words, know your numbers.
Oh, yeah.
But he's like, "You don't know your numbers, Paul."
I'm fine with that,
Yeah. But he's like, "You don't know your numbers. Like, you're asking me, and if I just tell you, then you still don't know your numbers." Because he realized, I'd say, "Hey, how much should I charge for this?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, $7.50 per bale of pine straw. How much should I charge?" And he was giving me the answers, but it was making me lazy because I was just copying whatever he told me, but I wasn't actually knowing my numbers. And so he's like, "Come on over one night." And he's like, "Print me out your bank account statements for each month." And I did a really good job. This was before I used the CRM, but I actually just used like Google Sheets back then. And I'd actually clock in, and this was, years ago, but I would clock in what time I arrived at the property, what time I left the property, if there was any materials, how much. Like I was a nerd with my numbers in the sense of I collected the data. I just didn't know how to analyze the data. So he's like, "Bring all that over." So I bring over, I don't know how many sheets of paper, but a lot. And my bank accounts, the bank summaries from each month, plus all this data I collected. He spreads it all over his kitchen counter, and his wife's she made steak and potatoes and salad. I can smell it right now. Awesome,
sounds good to me.
Dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she and we ate good too, man. When I was up there, you took me to that Penn Station. That was delicious, man. I might have to hit that place up next time. I'm November 7th, baby.
There you go.
Well, I might have to squeeze over. That was so good.
That was a guilty pleasure.
That was so fun, man. And that Jets pizza, I think, is what you got me at the crib. That was good too, man.
We got some good. We got some good eats in Metro Detroit, man. We're not like Chicagoland where you get all these new startups, or like Columbus, Ohio. You get all the newest of the country, but we still get our good fair share of food, man. And I'm a foodie. Don't let this frame fool you guys. I eat like it's borderline gluttony, okay? So. Yeah,
well, I'm a Chipotle guy, but the Penn Station and the Jets. That worked for me. So imagine this, Brian. He's got all these papers spread out on his kitchen counter, and this man's worked for what used to be called Brickman. I forget what they're called now.
Yeah, the national company.
Brightview.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a management, office type role with that company, and worked with a company that was doing $16 million in revenue a year, and then another big company like that. And he spent a little bit of time out in the field in his early days, but then he was more on the corporate side of managing. These big companies, they have managed people that just are in the office all day crunching numbers type deal. So did I lose you?
No, we're still here, man. I'm just listening and paying attention. So Brian Ring's like a regional manager or something, or a branch manager?
This guy. Well, we're not talking Brian Ring. This is another guy.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah, pardon me. But yeah, this guy, I'm not going to say his name. I don't know.
No.
Yeah. But I'm at his house. He lives here in Atlanta. And so I'm at him and his wife's house, and he's got all the papers spread across the counter, and he's, check marking this, and he's got his glasses on his nose, like in the movies. But he really did in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And he's looking down, and he's circling, and he's check marking, and he's being real quiet, and the guy's calculating and keeps punching numbers, and this goes on for probably like 25 minutes. So I'm just sitting there. And I don't really know what he's going to say. I thought I was doing good in business. I thought he'd be like, "Man, you're crushing it, dude." And whatever. Because
those are always the fun
revenue,
moments.
I was doing six figures, and my friends were making like 40,000 a year, and I'm like, man, I'm whatever. I thought I was doing good.
Yeah.
And his about after 20 minutes, he's got his glasses on his nose, and his wife, you could it was like a movie because you could see. I think she was stirring something in the pot, and then mashed potatoes. I think it was.
Did time slow down?
Stopped.
Things slowed down.
It slowed down, and he looked at me, and he had his hand on his forehead, and he was kind of rubbing his forehead, and he was looking at me, and he asked me this question. He says, "How are you even paying your bills?"
Oh no, those are always the fun moments.
And I said, he basically traced it to my prices were astronomically too low.
Okay.
And so that was like the wake up moment for me. And he's like, Paul, he's like, when you were solo, he basically explained, I'm not going to explain everything because I don't know how long your podcast really goes. And we were there all night.
We're good. We're just having fun.
Basically, and you cut me off when I do 2.5 hour podcasts before, so I gotta
right.
You gotta reel me in when it's time to reel me in.
We're halfway. You're good. These are like the gritty things that people don't get to hear behind the scenes. Everybody goes through these kind of pruning phases. So I want to know the real story.
Yeah. So the real story was, he gave me 2 pieces of instruction, and credit to his character and care, sensitivity and caring. He's like, I'm going to walk you through this, Paul, but we need 2 things to change immediately. We need your prices to increase immediately. He's like, you are charging too low, and your efficiency, we're going to have to figure out how to make this a more efficient operation. And so over the next years, I had my bookkeeper actually gave me a really good letter that I crafted. I sent out to all my customers explaining that there's going to be a rate increase, and actually lost several customers at that time. They're like, it's always been the price. And I was so off in my prices, I couldn't just bump it up a little bit. I had to bump it up a lot.
Yeah, that's
just
tough.
to get back. And what was happening, this is a long story short to answer your question, why I was staying afloat is because I was getting these $15,000 jobs that I was hitting at a pretty good, 30, 40% profit margin. And those were so good, they were keeping me afloat when all the other ones were going at break even or actually losing money, when it was really calculated with the taxes and the overhead, all your overhead, and really the whole spectrum. And so I just kept hitting home runs every now and again, which made my business stay afloat and look like it was doing good. But the reality was I was only doing good on a few jobs, and I was doing bad on other jobs. And then I realized the jobs I was doing good on and started doing more of those. And the jobs that I were doing bad on, I, eventually raised the prices a lot.
Did you?
That was the wake up call in my moment.
Did you
wake up call in my business?
Did you kind of feel like something was going on, like in your business? Like you're just like, man, I'm working a lot and I don't got a lot of show for it. Like, did you have any?
I felt like a rat in a wheel, and I also had I got to be careful how I said. I had a salary from my radio job. And so I had a bunch of income coming in from that, and I was sloppy and I was unorganized. So I was able to work it all together, because for a while there, I was actually even working full time at the radio station. So I had a full time job, and then the business was like part time. Well, then I actually, in a whole other story, I couldn't maintain both of those. Like I would do jobs where it was just a disaster. So anyway, I ended up going to the radio station from full time to 1 day a week, which is, right now, it's just on Sundays from noon to 6, and that's always fluctuating there. I'm always doing Saturday or Sunday or whatever, working best.
Yeah.
And then I did my business full time. So yeah, I felt like a rat in a wheel, and especially each year when I did my taxes, I'm like, so this doesn't. I don't know. This doesn't seem like I made all that money, but where is it? I heard Mike McCallowitz say that one time. He was like, "Yeah, his accountant told him, yeah, you made." Whatever it was, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars of profit this year. And Mike said to him, I'm paraphrasing, but where is it?
Where is it?
Where is it? Because it's not in my checking account, and I have this big tax bill. So yeah, I'm I'm joking and lighthearted about it, but it was scary back then. Now I've turned the corner and life is good in the hood, but back then it was scary, dude.
No, 100%. That's why I asked, man. I to be honest with you, like I had a little, it wasn't, I don't even know how to really describe it. Like I bumped into Bedell, a couple years ago, and Mike Bedell, and
oh yeah,
and he's a numbers guy. Like everybody has their strength zone, and Mike knows how to sell, and Mike knows how to market, and he's mastered the basics, right? But he's just a real cerebral dude on numbers, right? And just through osmosis, like people was like, what did Bedell teach you? I'm like, well, not like anything exactly like X's and O's, but it was just a lot of like the way he carried himself and the way he like made, in a good way, offhand comments about how he runs his business, like somebody would call and he'd be like, yeah, well, somebody's going to get a service charge, or somebody's, that's going to cost them, or like in a good way, like, we're cutting up obviously. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, like somebody's got to take care of the time. And like, if I'm going to go back over there or do something, or they want something, like you got to charge for that. And I'm like, oh, like I always did things for free, and like even like the little stuff like that, like just the stuff that nickels and dimes you, behind the scenes. And, like I always tell people, like your business doesn't usually fail because somebody takes a 2x4 across your head. It's usually like the death by 1,000 paper cuts thing I say, and,
right.
And so I learned a lot of things like that from Bedell with, and then also like how to treat my business more serious with, I was just talking to Chance Daily Hustle this morning, right, on a podcast. And he goes, yeah, when I left my job, I was making like $350 a week cutting grass, but I was making $350 a week at my job. He goes, I thought like if I just did a lateral, like I'd be making the same thing. He goes, I didn't know anything about taxes and overhead and payroll and buying gas. You know what I mean? And
right.
And so like it is kind of a something that people are probably going to get redundantly, in 2020 is know your numbers. Like it seems like a big buzzword phrase because a couple people say it, everybody says it, right? But I really do implore people, like listen to we did an episode with John Pajak, and he talked about the 3 B's. It was like your bottom lines, your budgets, and your break evens. I'm glad I remembered that. That was actually really impressive. But those are the kind of things that I always talk about, and I've been in that exact same boat, dude, where I'm like, dude, we're doing all this work, but like I don't feel like we're really netting things. And I've went through the crucible, to like grow my business and prune things and readjust things the last few years. And I think you just got to be honest with yourself. Like, are you actually making money? Like, I always say like busy doesn't equal productive. Just because you're busy running around or you got nice things, it doesn't mean you got money in the bank, and I didn't want to be known. I didn't want to be known as that guy,
Yeah. 2 more things to add to it. You just brought this up. John, long story short, that gentleman that was helping me, he went through an incredible tragedy. And his son passed away. And so there was a couple-year period where I felt like, I can't call him and ask him business advice. Like he's grieving the loss of his son. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm,
so anyway, John Pajak, that brother helped me too. I called him one night and, we did like a 2-hour consultation, and that guy helped me too. You just brought that up and it reminded me of that.
Yeah.
John asked me every question, how much did you spend last year on fuel? And I mean, he asked me the most nerdy questions, and then he came up with a number of, he's like, okay, you're break even. You have to be making this per hour to just break even. And if you want to be hitting this X profit margin, you need to be charging, whatever it was, $86 or whatever per hour. If you have this big of a crew, he had it broken down. So yeah, John Pajak, I'm going to definitely listen to that episode you did with him. And the other thing is
awesome,
here in Georgia, John Pajak, yeah, that man helped me too, tremendously. And then Georgia Bulldogs, it's a college here in Georgia. They had I think it was like $20 where you can go to their horticulture school. They do like an all-day teaching where they teach you how to come up with your numbers. And that I did. I think it was an 8-hour class. It was awesome. And once again, they did the same thing. They broke down every expense you could possibly have in your business, and then what you need to be charging per hour to be profitable, and how many hours you got to work a week, all that.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, you got to keep
between John.
Yeah. Well, you got to keep growing that. You got to keep learning and always be a student, and not get lazy, And by the way, if that's like not your strength zone, like hire it out or have somebody help you with it. I know I used to be a really behind the scenes, like back of the house, they call it, numbers guy. And then I just kind of realized, like, dude, as a business owner, you can only do a couple things, right? And I halfway through my business career, became a major front of the house kind of guy. Sales, top line, right? But I also learned back in my days working at Little Caesars that, I got bonused as a store manager on the net profit on the store. Right. So I always knew like the bottom line was super important, but I think I kind of lost that a little bit as I got a little bit older, like late 20s. And I really started to wake up when, I got a girlfriend, I got, engaged, we got married, and, we're doing all this again. The engines are burning up, the wheels are moving, we're balding tires, we're, blowing up transmissions, like in a good way, we're burning up engines. Like, where's all the extra? Like why not? In the last few years, it's like I always say, dude, YouTube's been such a two-way street because I've been pruned. I get hundreds and thousands of people commenting on me and my business model, and people reach out behind the scenes, and I'm like, dude, I appreciate that. I never thought about this. I never thought about that. And so, like I always say, like we're all learning together. It's not a soundbite. It's true. And so I always appreciate people listening in that shoot me a comment and notice things. So I can definitely echo with what you're saying, and that's cool that you've had that like self-realization. It's huge that if you don't, you're just going to keep spinning the tires. And I don't think we want to see anybody do that.
Right. Dude, Little Caesar sounds so good right now. Did you get free pizza? Or man, I can't stop thinking about putting Little Caesar.
Yeah.
Was it good?
They're honest answer, Little Caesars it's like Taco Bell. Okay. You have to consume it in the first like 5 or 10 minutes, because after that, it kind of looks like something that you wouldn't want to consciously put in your body. Okay. So I don't think Little Caesars will be a sponsor of the show, so we can say that in confidence.
What was it? Fresh, hot and ready, or fresh and ready? Did they have like a $5 deal?
Well, it's hot and ready, but the joke is you only get one or the other. It's hot. You walk into you walk into Little Caesars. It's like they're either never ready, or if they are ready, they've been sitting in the hot box thing for 20 minutes. And so I was a big quality guy when I served pizzas, man, because I like me a good pizza. And it's funny, dude. I heard somebody we was on a podcast the other day. I think it was Alex Nickens, and he was like talking about being passionate about something, and something he had this really good one-liner, but it was like if you enjoy what you do, like make it your hobby, or if you enjoy your hobby, don't make it what you do, because you'll get burned out and you'll dislike it eventually, right? Well, that's me with Little Caesars, dude. I used to be a huge Little Caesars nut with their. I don't know why we're talking about Little Caesars now. They can send me a check for the shout out. But everybody's all the lawn care guys are going to lunch right now, watching and going to Little Caesars. Right? I haven't had that in a while. They're a private company, but their stock just went up. A couple dollars. Well, so it was just funny because I can't eat Little Caesars anymore, dude. Like I've turned into a Jets Pizza and a Pizza Hut guy.
You know what? Jets is good. That's what you and Liz got that day I was there, right?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Because I can't eat.
That was good.
I can't eat Little Caesars anymore. I'm burned out on it, So I made 50,000 pizzas, dude, in 4 years, and I can eat their breadsticks and the cheese bread, but I can't do the pizza. But anyway, well, let's do this. Let's shift gears, because I really appreciate you talking a little bit more about your traditional business. I think it gives a little bit more context and credibility to the Green Industry podcast, what you got going on, because number one, I don't think a lot of people knew your story, which again, you're always asking the questions, so it's cool to put you guys on the firing line, you and Julio, for example. But let's talk about the Green Industry podcast as we get this podcast wrapping up. We got about 20 minutes or so, because this is I know you're super passionate about this, man, and you have so many good things going on. You've behind the scenes, actually, I don't know if people know this. If you ever hear like the old like saying, like, if you see a turtle sitting on a fence post, it didn't get there on its own, and it looks cool. It looks cool, but people are like, how'd that get there? Well, that's me with a lot of different things. Okay. And what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of people that I ask questions. I always network. I beg, help me out, and so like I owe a lot of my success on YouTube to like Stanley Dirt Monkey, because that guy is phenomenal. channel. Keith Kalfas with my training website and a lot of my marketing. Keith is just he really is a genius. He's crazy in a good way. He's just an amazing dude and one of the most influential people in my life, and just because we kind of grew up similar stories. And then let's look at this new project that I'm doing in 2020, which is a podcast. I have no idea why. It's just a fun extension of my brand and what we got going on. And but really, it's designed to give you guys something to listen to and listen to other folks that are out there, something that you can relate with, hopefully something you could vibe with and have some fun with. And I just love interviewing people, man. I really do like having conversations and getting the network. And I say all that to say this is that from the beginning, Paul, you've had your fingerprints on my podcast because you're coaching me behind the scenes on how to do a podcast. So you are a super smart guy with radio. You've had a huge background in this for a decade. You've had a lot of success with your podcast. And so let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We'll shake it up, grab a sip of water. And then for the last 15, 20, 25 minutes here, I want to talk about the Green Industry Podcast and let everybody know about this huge resource that is now on the map, that you are the one that's quarterbacking the whole thing. It's your podcast, and it's turned into a tremendous asset in the lawn care community. I know a lot of people really appreciate it. So let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Enjoying today's show? Motivated to take your lawn care and landscaping business to the next level? Learn what it takes to grow your lawn and landscaping business today with training and education from the Lawntrepreneur Academy. Get educated with how-tos on mulch installation, plowing snow, aeration and overseeding, and so much more. These training programs are designed to help you save time and make more money with your business. Invest in your future by first investing in yourself. Use promo code PODCAST to save 10% on all courses today at LawnTrepreneurAcademy.com. Now, back to the show.
All right, cool. So Paul, the Green Industry Podcast, right? It's hard to keep you sitting still long enough because you're so fidgety in a good way about this podcast, right? You love podcasting. You're a podcast junkie. You're a sports guy too, and I know you have a sports podcast, if I'm not mistaken. So where did this come into play? Like, is this like a pet hobby, a pet project that came into play because you wanted to document, like you said, some of your successes and some of your failures? Was this super intentional? Did you fall into it? And where's the podcast at today, man? Give me that timeline because
absolutely. I got a story. I got a confession to share with you, Brian.
All right, let's do it.
Let me give the backstory, and I'm going to confess something to you.
Sure.
Backstory is I was in South Carolina years ago, probably 7 or so years ago, Charleston, South Carolina. I was laying out at the pool with my sister. I get a phone call out of the blue, and I knew the general manager at the big radio station here in Atlanta, and he was calling me out of the blue. We're friends, but he didn't normally just call me out of the blue. And he calls me and says, "Hey, Paul, what you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm actually hanging out at the pool right now with, my sister and her friends." I mean, I was having a good time,
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, weird question, but we're launching a new show, midnight to 6 a.m. Would you be interested in covering the weekend shift?"
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I said, "Let me get this straight. You want me to be on the radio from midnight to 6 a.m.?" And he said, "It'd just be 2 nights a week." And I was like, "Well, I don't know if I'd be any good. I mean, I've never done radio." And anyway, he's like, "I'm offering you the job. Do you want it or not?" And I said, give me 24 hours to think and pray about it." And I was thinking, that sounds pretty cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm a shrewd negotiator. So we'll get a deal. And he's like, "The job's yours." So I fell in love with broadcasting. I mean, out of the gate, I loved it. And it just instantly, I just knew I was in the right place. You know what I mean? I just knew this is what I'm called to do. And so I did the radio show for a while, and I had my lawn care company. Before I ever did radio, I already had my lawn care company.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started thinking of the perfect marriage. I'm like, well, I know all this about profit margins and quarterly taxes and all this stuff about business I learned the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm already doing broadcasting to a very large audience in Atlanta. But that was different content.
Yeah.
And the boss, I used to talk about lawn care and landscaping on the radio, Yeah, hey, don't forget to get your pre-emergent out before it's too late. My boss
my
like,
God.
hey, we need to cut back on the
The sound bites
on the
and
landscape and lawn care
the
stuff. And I was
advice.
like, all right, it's in my blood. Like people really don't care when to get the pre-emergent. I was like, I need to know.
I'm just helping them
Come up
out.
on deadline.
It's free advice.
So I was like, why don't I start my own podcast? So this literally, because I was a podcast junkie. I listened to Dave Ramsey's podcast and a bunch of other business podcasts and even some sports podcasts and a lot of sermons and podcasts, in that realm. And so I love podcasts, and I probably listen to them a little bit different than others because I can hear how they're being produced. And by the way, for a couple of years, I'm kicking around the idea like, why don't I just start my own podcast? But my life was stretched thin. I was running my lawn care business, and that was growing astronomically, and I was biting off more than I can chew, which is still to this hour a struggle in my life. And the radio station keeps giving me more and more and more opportunity. And then, people are inviting me to come preach and do stuff at their, all these events. And my schedule was crazy, let alone to attempt to even have a social life. So I kept putting off. Well, thank God for a bunch of awesome friends. We mentioned Caleb Allman and Taylor Taliaferro and Brian Ring, and I'm leaving guys out, Blake Albertson and a bunch of other guys. That are just
all
my
good dudes,
friends,
great guys.
And there's a handful of more. I'm just, if I start mentioning everyone, then everyone that had encouraged me to do a podcast, then I'd be forgetting people. But there was many people that I said, hey, dude, I'm thinking about doing a podcast. And this was back before right now, podcasting, we talked about this off air. It's literally the hottest thing out right now. Like everyone's starting a podcast. But back then it wasn't like it is now. It was like, yeah, Julio Tomei and Stanley Genetic had podcasts, but that was it. I mean, you know what I mean? Now like everyone is trying to have one. But anyway, I kept kicking the can down the road because I was so busy. Well, one of the best things ever happened to me, Brian Ring in Stillwater, Minnesota, for his 10th shout out. I don't know why I keep shouting out him, but
he's an OG, dude. He's like a godfather. You could shout him out.
Yeah,
much respect to Brian Ring.
He gave me a 48-inch commercial mower and a trailer, and he's like, fly up to Stillwater and get it. Well, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because it forced me to slow down, and because I had to drive from Stillwater, Minnesota to Atlanta, Georgia, which was, I think, 19-hour trip. And I split it up with, I spent the night at Rusty Everidge in Indiana.
Yeah.
But it slowed me down because I couldn't get out of the U-Haul for 19 hours just sitting behind that wheel. I was driving through Illinois, Brian. I'm driving through Illinois. This is a deep answer to your question.
Yeah.
But have you ever seen that movie, Field of Dreams, where there's a scene in the movie, it's a baseball movie, and he says, if you build it, they will come. He ends up building a baseball stadium in the middle of like Iowa or I don't know.
Nebraska or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ohio.
And then like all these legendary baseball players like come and play baseball at night. Well, as I didn't hear the audible voice of God, but internally, I know I heard from the Lord. Like it was pretty obvious.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the radio on the U-Haul, and it was something along the line. I'm paraphrasing, and it was very special what happened. So I don't want to, it was an intimate time between me and the Lord. But he basically said, if you build it, if you make the show, they will listen. And I kind of had a vision of people all across, the world, but specifically all across the United States, all these different. It's hard to explain because I saw it in like a millisecond, but it was like it would take me like 10 minutes to explain to you everything that got downloaded to me. But the nutshell summary was, if I made the podcast, it would be successful. And this was just a word from God to my soul. Like I knew it, that if I make the show, people from all over are going to listen and be benefited from, be blessed from. And so that was the last thing I needed. I couldn't wait to get back to Atlanta fast enough because I knew it was time to start the podcast.
Have you been thinking about it beforehand? And like this was confirmation?
I mentioned it, like I said, to all these other guys, to Blake Albertson, Brian Ring, Caleb Allman, Naylor Taliaferro, and a handful of others. I had told them, hey, dude, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. And they just said, yeah, dude, go for it. I think you would be really good at that. They encouraged me, but I never did it. I had the idea, but I never took action.
Sure.
It was just an idea. That encounter I had in my U-Haul with the Lord about starting the podcast. And I could elaborate it, but I said, I think what needs to be said. I knew I needed to start it.
Yeah.
Meaning I would be disobedient if I didn't start it. I get back to Atlanta. Timing was perfect because right when I got back, Naylor Taliaferro was doing this thing, and it was called Get to Know the Pro, where he would fly into your city and interview you for YouTube or whatever. And so he wanted to interview me, and he flew into Atlanta, and so I was like, and this was before I knew I was starting the show. I was like, well, hey, just meet me at the radio station, because he was coming in on a Sunday, and I had to work at the radio station on Sunday. So I was like, well, just come by the studio. And this was all pre-planned before I knew I was starting the podcast, like for sure starting it.
Okay.
So I had Naylor there, and I was like, dude, I'm starting the podcast like right now. And there's a bunch of recording studios there. So I was like, go in the studio. Let's go in the studio. And that was my first episode. Me and him chatted for an hour and a half, and I cut it into 3 episodes. So that's where it all started. You were my second interview. Because I think I told you, like, dude, I'm starting a podcast. And you're like, yeah, anything I can do to help, man. You're just 2 hands, wide open, generous.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let me interview you, man. And I interviewed you, and, you shared it. And then we were off and running. And then, we haven't looked back. And it's been life-changing. It's called the Green Industry Podcast. And it's, I feel like it's just a kid in the candy store every episode. I just have so much fun making it.
Dude, for sure. Well, why don't you, let's land it here for a second though, because why don't you explain to folks, like what do you got going on? You do interviews, you share your own advice. You've had, maybe give some of the guests that are out there, because one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast selfishly was to let everyone know naturally about your podcast. Because I know I think I have 1 or maybe 2 episodes on there now, and but dude, like the amount of folks that are listening to it and downloading it, you can share as much as you want or not, but it's growing really well. Like, it's growing well. You get a lot of downloads. A lot of folks are really engaging with it, and you got some really good guest interviews on there.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun, and Stanley Genetic was at your event. And he just said, hey, man, anything I can do to help you, let me know. And he busts out his phone, and he's like, oh, here's 60 seconds. And he gets on his Instagram story. He's like, hey, I'm here with, he gives me a plug, and I interviewed him at your event. Yeah. Your event was awesome, dude. I interviewed
Thanks,
Sean Spencer, Spencer's Lawn Care, who's crushing it on YouTube. And just him and Trimmer Queen are just great people. He's from my same hometown. So, yeah, I've interviewed Sean Spencer, and Trimmer Queen multiple times. Keith Kalfas has been on, 4 or so episodes, 5, I think actually 5, and he's a friend of the show, and just a friend off air. You and Liz have been on, Naylor Taliaferro, Alan Hain, the Lawn Care Nut. We interview a lot of folks, big names, and then guys that you might not have ever heard of but have interesting stories. I interviewed a guy a couple weeks ago who he got fired from his job, and he's starting lawn care full time. I thought that's a really cool story, because a lot of guys are in that boat. And so he shared his story of how he went from getting the news that he's fired to he had a trailer in his backyard, and he's like, well, I better get to work, and just started out of desperation. So if I find a cool story, Caleb Allman about hardscaping, he's a friend of the show and a sponsor of the show. We've interviewed him multiple times. Julio Tomei, the lawn care business success. I mean, you can go through the archives. There's a whole bunch of awesome interviews in there. But I wanted to tell you the funny story that I got to confess.
Yeah.
And so I'm in a car. Well, let me back the story up.
What's up?
You remember I was in the car with Jason Creole. I think his name's Matt from Equipment Defender.
Mm-hmm.
And you. And I was in the passenger seat. And you're like, did you pass gas? Do you remember that story? You're like, man, it smells in here.
I don't remember. I don't know.
Yo, you don't remember? Then maybe I shouldn't tell you the story.
No, go ahead. I don't care. It's unfiltered, man. That's the podcast.
That's why I'm killing it, just because this is unfiltered.
I didn't sleep for like 5 days, bro. Like running that live event. Like I was I was living on Red Bulls, like the 3 days before, man. And so I picked you guys up. I'm going to bed at 2 a.m. I'm waking up at 7. The live event, I woke up at 5. I need to be at the hotel at 7. I got 200 people coming in. I'm freaking out, right? So I was a little high strung. I don't remember every detail that week. It was a blur.
All right. Well, it was what, on a Thursday and Friday, or Friday and Saturday? What was the day?
Friday, everybody flew in, so I'm hosting, arguably like the biggest names of what we do, and I'm like, all right.
On Saturday.
The event was Saturday, but I had everybody coming in on Friday. But since Thursday, I'm doing like the walkthrough with the event coordinator at the place. And, I'm like, hey, I just want to make sure everybody has a good, fun experience. I don't want anybody to get left at the airport. I'm renting cars. I got, a half dozen hotel rooms. I'm like, dude, we're just writing checks, dude. I was just like freaking out. There's a huge budget and bankroll. You and I have talked about live events, and they're not easy,
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm gonna give myself a pass because I was freaking out. I was freaking out.
Okay. So here's my backstory.
Yeah.
Your event, I flew in on Friday, and just so the listeners know, after your event, you and I had a great time on Sunday. We hung out. We got a little back end work done for the Unfiltered podcast, and we hung out at Penn Station. I had an awesome time with you and Liz. By the way, that was fun.
Thanks, man.
For me,
we enjoyed having you over at the house. It was a blessing for sure. We still talk about it.
Yeah, definitely want to do it again now that your garage is finished and get to see the finished product. That'll be really fun.
Yeah.
In the future. So on Monday or Tuesday of that week, I got sick and I was not feeling well, and I'm like, I have got to get better by Friday because I'm helping you build your podcast. This is a huge opportunity for my podcast because you had all the awesome folks, Blake Albertson and Caleb Allman and Brittany and Sean Spencer and Stanley Genetic and all those guys, Jason Creel, all those guys were there, and I was able to interview most of them back at the hotel, so it was a huge blessing for me. Well, anyway, on Monday and Tuesday, I'm like I was so sick, I'm like, oh my gosh, Brian's gonna kill me. Like I'm gonna have to call him and tell him I can't make it. And I'm like, no, I'm going no matter what. So I got all these elderberry syrup and echinacea and soup, and I'm taking Epsom salt baths, and I'm doing everything I can to get healed up.
Okay.
And so I start, and I was talking to some medical friend, and they're like, take as much vitamin C as you can, and that will help flush it and get rest and all this stuff. And so anyway, and I had a bunch of work to do. Ironically, we had a bunch of jobs we're doing, so I'm out working all day while I'm sick, wondering how I'm going to get better by Friday. So, because I had just gone to Silicon Valley and Chicago and Louisville, like back to back. I was traveling all over the world while trying to run my business.
Yeah, for like 6 weeks, you were on tour.
Yeah, and that's probably why I got sick. But my business, like I had all these customers, like, hey, what are you kind of like,
Right,
so
right.
I'm like, I was in a bad spot. So I'm taking this vitamin C like crazy. Well, on Friday morning, I woke up and I was not feeling well. Like it was literally, do I call Brian and break his heart, or do I take as much vitamin C as I can, get on the plane and make the most of it?
Right.
And it was literally a game time decision. I was like 10 minutes. I'm like,
oh my God,
I do not feel good. The next 10 minutes, I'm like, come on, pull it together, take that vitamin C. So I start taking this vitamin C. Well, I get to the airport, and I'm like, man, my stomach starts hurting.
Dude, my brain just recalled this smell. Just so you know.
Okay.
Oh my God, I'm so mad at you right now.
I'm on the plane. I'm at the airport, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my stomach, like I do not feel good. And so I go in the bathroom and I let it loose. And I get done, and I board the plane, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my stomach, because if you take a whole bunch of vitamin C, apparently it does something to your stomach. So I'm literally on the airplane, and this guy's like, so what do you do? And he's trying to sit here and small talk with me, and I had to use the restroom, number 2.
Oh my God.
And I'm sitting there trying to talk to him and concentrate. This is a true story. This is unfiltered.
Oh, you got the
Brian,
sweats.
I pooped my pants. I literally, poop is running down my thigh. It's running down my calf. I watched it drip. I promise you, I watched it drip down my leg into my shoe. I pooped my pants on the airplane. Oh, it smelled so. I promise you, dude, it smelled so bad. I'm like, oh my gosh. And this guy, I don't know if he knew, because if you fart and then you could maybe like, well, you don't know if it was me or if it was someone else, you could kind of play dumb. I mean, I got poop down my thigh, down my calf, in my sock, in my shoe.
Oh my God.
I'm like, oh my God. I get off the whole plane smelled, dude. Everyone knew.
Oh my God.
Someone pooped themselves. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my gosh.
This is
I
embarrassing.
land and you're like, I think you left me a text. Hey man, come hang out with, the night before with Stan and Ben Blake and Jason and we're getting ready and blah, 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 blah. So I'm like, dude, I smell. So, I get off the plane. I'm like, I changed my socks and underwear and I threw them away. My favorite pair of jeans, dude, my favorite. Oh, they were these stretch. I love these.
No
jeans,
going back
dude.
now.
They're my favorite pair.
Burn
I threw
them.
them away at the airport. I threw my socks away. My shoes I kept. I scrubbed off the debris, and I threw away my boxers and everything.
This is a
But
real
anyway,
story. You're not messing. You're not.
This is unfiltered. This is unfiltered. So then we're in. Brian's got this fancy rental car, and I'm in there with Matt from Equipment Defender. I'm so embarrassed. Jason Creel, he's really funny, but he's actually really shy. Like, he doesn't talk.
He's quiet.
So we're in the car, and Jason doesn't talk. Matt's not really talking. He's from Florida, and it was freezing cold. And I'm not talking because I'm like, I still have dried poop on my thigh. Like, my confidence was destroyed. And then Brian's like, well, did you have some of that airplane food? It smells kind of like you passed gas. And I didn't say anything, but I'm thinking, passed gas, Brian, I got poop on my leg. I pooped my pants, dude.
Oh, my God.
I was too embarrassed to tell you, but I didn't fart. I had pooped previously, and it was dried up on my thigh. So
Dude, people
there
are,
you go, on Unfiltered.
dude, that is ridiculously funny. People are listening to this right now as they're cutting grass. They're like, what the hell, Paul Jamison? Like, good Christian young man, Paul Jamison, like never has a hair out of place, like you're a cherub, you're an altar boy. And here you are literally blaming your farts and your flatulence on other people on the airplane.
Oh man, it was vitamin C. I had too much vitamin C, but then my stomach. I couldn't eat on Friday and I couldn't eat on Saturday. Like those pretzels and all that stuff, I couldn't eat it because my stomach was it still carried over into Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was constantly going to the restroom, and then by Sunday it had cleared up a lot better. So by the time you took me to Penn Station, it was so good because I'm like, oh my gosh, food, and
Solid
I devoured
food.
that Penn Station
Oh my
and
God.
the Jets. But yeah, when you asked me, because do you remember asking? You're like, did you have some bad airline flu?
I was like, what is
And you
that? So
that was dried poop on my leg. That's what it was.
well, I guess tongue in cheek, I appreciate you not canceling, but and I'm probably glad too that you didn't tell me because I probably would have told you to catch an Uber, because I rented a what is that, like a Nissan I don't know, like Armada, or I know the Infinity's
Armada, yeah.
I know the Infinity's like QX80. But
yeah, and I hadn't gotten a shower yet because I went straight from the airport to the dinner thing to your event where we set up and everything, and I'm sitting there and you're introducing me to all, hey, this is so and so from this brand and this so and so from this brand, and I'm like, my confidence, I had zero. I had negative confidence.
I don't blame you.
I'm like, hi Paul. Yeah, Paul, I have a podcast. Hi, I smell like poop.
Oh my God.
But thankfully, because I drove Thunder the next day, but I went back to that hotel and scrubbed myself off, man. It was nasty. It was because I have hair on my thigh and it was all like crushed. It was nasty. I won't give you details. It was nasty.
Well, it's funny.
Nasty.
It's funny because Sean Spencer came up, and Sean's a bud. Sean comes up and he goes, he was texting me the night before. He's like, hey, there's like a 20% chance I might come on up. I said, well, hey, if you come up, I'll take care of you with a room because I got some extra space with Paul Jamison. I said, there's a 2 queen in there. I said, if you guys want to switch out the reservation to a single king, that's up to you. But just kidding. And, but I got a double queen. If you guys want to hang out together, that's fine. And he's like, yeah, dude, I appreciate it. He's like, I'll be coming in on fumes. And so, you didn't tell Sean about any of this story that you were?
No, because he drove up Saturday morning, so this was Friday night when I got back to the hotel. So I was alone in the room that night. Blake was like, B&B was like, hey, because we had just got back from helping you set up, and Blake Albertson was on fumes because he had flown in from Miami.
Yep.
So he's like, hey man, I'm really tired, but this is our only shot to bang out a podcast.
Yeah.
He's like, I'll be in your room in 2 minutes. And because he was in the room like right next to mine, I was like, yeah, dude. I was like, I'm gonna use the restroom real quick. Let's make it 10 minutes. I took a super quick shower before he came in. Like I took a shower in like 2 minutes. And he walks in, I still got my hair wet. And then we did a podcast, me and him. And then as soon as he left, that's when I took, like a 45-minute hot shower and cleansed my body from the deposit. And that was the story. So it wasn't airline food as you asked me.
Oh my God.
And you were like timid to ask because and I don't know how you knew it was me because it could have been Matt, it could have been Jason, and I was like, how does he know it's me? Like I must really smell. And,
oh my God.
I mean, I knew I smelled, but when you're in a group, you don't know exactly who it is.
Well,
but you knew it was me.
I don't know. I thought somebody just did it, and I'm in the truck with 4 bros. I don't care if somebody farts.
I think you cracked the window too. I think you put the window down a little bit.
Well, I'm just one of those guys, dude. I don't care if you do it. Just put a window down. It's like I don't know. I tell everybody, just crack the window, dude. I don't care if I'm a dude. Do your thing, man. I love talking about poop because there's no women that probably listen to the podcast anyway. But it's just funny because just put the window down. But when somebody doesn't put the window down and they bake it in there, I'm like, you can get out now. We will leave you. Like Wolfpack style. At the so it's like you can just walk. But it's funny because yeah, dude, you got to imagine the picture there. It is worth funny mentioning because of context. Like Matt from Equipment Defender, he's really quiet. Jason Creel, he's really quiet.
They were sitting in the back. It was me and you in the front 2 seats.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, they're just stoic dudes, and they're just not bubbly personality, and I'm actually pretty quiet too. So it's 3 dudes just quiet, and I'm like, what the hell is that? It's
that's my thigh, dude.
Oh my God.
Dried poop on my thigh because you said something like, hey, did you have some bad airline food on the way up here? And I'm thinking, you have no idea, buddy. I have pooped to my pants. I mean, it wasn't it was to be specific, it was diarrhea, cream, string, it just
looks
down.
Looks like some Gerber baby food, right? Well
yeah, and it went right down my inner thigh, down my calf, down into my shoe.
Well, 20 minutes ago, you had all the credibility in the world of having a successful, a nationally recognized podcast, ranking on the top podcast 100. Now people are like, is that Paul the Pooper? Pooper. No, I'm just kidding. Let's not have that.
Hey, we did crack the top 100 in business entrepreneurship. Green Industry Podcast, baby.
Paul. You know what you're doing right now, right? You're giving me hope. You're now you're turning into the, if that guy can do it, I can tear this thing up guy, and I'm just having fun. Well, dude, this has been fun. I think we're gonna cut it there because you and I can go on forever. I don't want to do a 2-hour podcast, but let's do this really quick before we wrap up. I know you just talked about the podcast, but if you can plug your socials one more time, where can people find the podcast? Where can people find more of you? Instagram. Take 10 seconds and let everybody know where they can find you.
Absolutely. My name's Paul Jamison. You can type that into any of the iTunes or Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify search engines, or type in Green Industry Podcast, and that's where you can find us on Instagram as well. I do 2 accounts. I have the Green Industry Podcast account where we do everything about the show, and then my personal Instagram is just Paul Jamison, where I share more about my life and some inspiration and motivational stuff. But yeah, definitely check out the Green Industry Podcast. This is Unfiltered with Brian Fullerton. So normally we're more serious on my show. It's serious, but since it's unfiltered, you guys got that unfiltered. Green Industry Podcast. Check it out.
Well, we'll leave notes in the show notes and all that fun stuff. And you can listen to it right on your podcast. So after this one, if you guys want another fun episode, just swing on over to Paul's, and don't forget to subscribe. And by the way, Paul won't say this, but I will. Give him a 5-star review, man. If you've never dropped a review, just take 10 seconds, leave a 5-star on mine, leave a 5-star on his. They go a long way to making what we do that much more rewarding because it's cool to have the feedback. And then number 2, the algorithms. Whatever that means, helps promote everybody's podcast better. And so you guys taking 10 seconds out of your day to do that for us, we super appreciate it. So Paul, dude, I appreciate the time, man. We'll have to get you back on the show, maybe do like a midsummer update or something like that, and see what's new. And I know you're gonna be.
Hopefully I'll have my girlfriend by then. So that's my goal.
We need to do a whole nother podcast just on that story, because I feel like there's more that you're alluding to that you're not letting on. You know what I mean? And everybody's always rooting for you. So,
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, cool. Well, hey, again, appreciate you guys listening to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast. We'll definitely look forward to catching up with you guys on the next episode.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the Fullerton Unfiltered podcast with Brian Fullerton. We hope you enjoyed this production. If so, please consider leaving us a 5-star review for the show. While the techniques and ideas presented here are designed to help you grow a more successful and profitable business, no one can guarantee these results for you. We want to emphasize that entrepreneurship is not easy, and the ideas presented here are just the opinions of Brian Fullerton and his respective guests. No one can guarantee success for you. That being said, we hope the ideas presented here help you and motivate you to go on out there and crush it with your own business.
Fullerton Unfiltered podcast.
Thanks for listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode.